As business owners, entrepreneurs, family men, it's difficult for us to find the time to put together projects like these. Even though it's something we really want to do, unfortunately, taking care of the things we have to take care of comes first. However, because of viewer support for people like you, we're able to continue doing this. Please consider joining our Patreon and supporting the Burn and Return podcast. You're listening to Burn and Return, a weekly 1-hour podcast covering news from the agricultural and turfgrass industries. Welcome to another episode of Burn and Return. Boy, we've got a doozy for you today because guess what? When you start reading the news, there ain't a whole lot to be happy about, that's for sure. But you know what? We're going to do our best to go through some headlines, absolutely get everybody freaked out, tweaked out, and squirreled up. And then we're going to bring it back with just a little bit of good news so everybody feels that much better about themselves through the rest of the week. Potentially will be my caveat of that statement. Alongside me on tonight's show, we have two very important people. We have Mr. Ryan DeMay and Mr. Rayito. Gentlemen, how the hell are y'all doing?
Well, I'm doing fine. I was a little bit worried about you because for our Thirsty Thursday show this past week, you were sick. And, I'm not a doctor, right? I have no medical training, but I would say that anybody that gets an acute case of genital elephantitis like you did probably ought to go to the animal husbandry clinic over there at UT Knoxville and then go on bed rest for several days after. And I hope that's what you did. I certainly hope so. Ray, don't you think so? I think Ray froze.
Ray had enough of it. He was like, listen, DeMay, you teed me up with a situation I wasn't prepared for here.
And he heard animal husbandry.
Yeah. Which one did he hear that sent him away?
I don't know the animal husbandry. That's where you got to go. That's the only clinic that's going to treat for you anyway. That's going to treat genital elephantitis, the acute kind, of course. I mean, it's certainly not chronic, but
what do they prescribe for that? Is there injections involved? Am I gonna? I think it pin.
What is the? I was gonna say. Wait, did you say peg you?
Drained?
That might be. I was gonna say that might be a cure for it. Wait, we're gonna make this thing get smaller real quick. All right, we're way off the line here. We're way off the line. So anyway, I'm doing great. Good. I'm sure Ray's doing awesome too. It was just we knocked that intro out of the park. Well, I tell you what. Let's go ahead and jump into this week's headlines.
Nothing to fear here. This is just the news.
Yeah, that's right. Nothing to fear here. Just kidding, because we almost had the biggest fertilizer plant explosion in the history of the United States. For those of you that live under a rock, there was a fertilizer a blending and storage facility just outside of Winston-Salem, North Carolina, that caught on fire this week. And this is a place that stores somewhere around 600 tons of ammonium nitrate. And to put that into perspective, the last biggest explosion we had of a fertilizer plant was down in Texas. I believe that was the West Fertilizer Facility, somewhere down there in Texas, maybe near Waco or something. I can't recall.
That was a big boom.
That was a big boom, and there we were talking about 40 to 65 tons of ammonium nitrate. Now they had another 100 tons that luckily was not part of that explosion, but the actual storage area that did explode, I believe it may have been a little bit more, 50 to 80 tons, something like that. And they had a rail car that was off to the side. So very fortunate, but what was unfortunate is that it still managed to kill 15 people and injure a huge number more. Now, a miracle of miracles with this here. Nobody died. There was no explosion. Nobody
I
died.
know.
But there is going to be some ramifications that take place because of this, and that will kind of lead into the next one here that I had teed up. And first things first is we are seeing significant runoff from the fertilizer plant, fire being expelled, and that runoff is rich with nitrates that is making their way to waterways. Now, I've got to point this out, and this is one thing I took away from here. Water runoff from the site went into a stormwater pipe that empties into Menacres Creek south of the 800 block of North Point Boulevard. Dead fish were found along the creek from the drain down to where Menarcas Creek meets Mill Creek. Officials also raised concern about Muddy Creek because Mill Creek flows into it. The city's working on putting up water quality notices along the affected creeks. A little further down here, it says the city believes that additional contamination source may have been raw materials that were left exposed to the rain at a Winston Weaver Company storage facility on Brownsboro Road. The company has until February 18th to get those materials under a roof. Otherwise, it'll be fined up to $500 a day. To avoid further contaminating city creeks, crews have built water retention berm to catch any runoff water from the ongoing fire battle before it reaches storm drains. The water is being collected and will be treated offsite. As of Saturday morning, crews have already captured 400,000 gallons of water from the site. Ryan, talk to me here. Listen, we did avert a crisis, and I'm glad.
Oh gosh,
I'm glad nobody died. Big time.
yeah, like seriously, like this was teed up, ready to go, and be a very very bad situation. Like that the thing in Texas was one thing, right? Because it was kind of out in the middle of nowhere to a certain extent, whereas this is in Winston-Salem proper, right? And there could have been huge ramifications, loss of life, all that kind of stuff. So fortunately there was nothing like that. But yeah, now you're seeing all these, no pun intended, but downstream effects, right? Where the runoff, the issues that they're having, they had evacuations surrounding this place that, because of the smoke and some of the fumes and things like that, they couldn't have people in and around their homes for, I think it was like 4 or 5 days. And so it has been, a big thing that's been avoided, but you got to wonder, and this is what I'd be curious to see is how much gets out about, what caused the fire and was everything stored, according to best management practices? Was everything stored legally where it should be to protect it from fire? And so I don't know. I mean, Matt, you kind of clue me in. I mean, what is a fire inspection like for a fertilizer blending plant? That's got to be a little bit more than like say your average, J.C. Penney's or some shit like that, right?
It can be depending upon whether or not you store oxidizers on site, right? And what I mean by oxidizers are if it is a raw material that ends in nitrate, aside from calcium nitrate, it's you are immediately put into a high risk category because an oxidizer meets flame, especially if there's fuel involved. Then we're talking really, really big boom potential here. Oxidizers feed fire and to the point of creating explosion, right? And so these things become vaporized, these nitrates become vaporized, and all hell can potentially break loose really, really, really quickly. So it Ryan, it's not as intense as you would think, but it is definitely there. And what's most important is, where you're storing it, right? Are you on a concrete surface? Is it concrete walls that are around it? Just making sure you're not storing. You don't have a stack of pallets, 300 pallets tall, 300 pallets wide. It's surrounding your, 150, 200 tons of ammonium nitrate kind of deal. That's a big no-no. But if it's stored in a concrete or a concrete walled building with a metal roof, then typically that's the appropriate storage. The question is that you brought up that is a great one is how the hell does this catch on fire? What was in there to catch things on fire? And it could be a whole host of things, right? When you're talking about manufacturing in this kind of capacity, you're dealing with really, really high voltages, right? So, we've got 460 volt running everywhere. probably high amperage stuff, and you have a motor fail, and there's no redundancy built in. Shit can hit the fan relatively quickly. So what caught fire and what fueled the fire as it continued to burn, I don't know. And that will be an amazing piece of information that comes out about this. And the fact that there was no boom may point to the fact that they did have everything stored correctly. And so, and that may be, that may be the big saving grace in this whole thing, is that this may be an example of, like, look, this was a really bad fire, and the potential for this to go boom was really, really bad, and it didn't, because they did everything by the book, right? So it'll be crazy interesting to see. Now, a couple of takes, and this is something I picked up on, and I think it's important to address, is people saying we're already in the midst of a fertilizer shortage. A fertilizer plant burns to the ground. Is this a setup? Why would this happen? Did somebody catch it on fire? What the hell's going on here? Now, you know how. Listen, I love a good conspiracy. I love a good conspiracy. That one didn't get me.
No,
like I didn't bite on that.
That's not even store brand tinfoil hat shit. I mean, that's not even. It's not that good. I don't buy that. It's probably Jimmy out there having a smoke break out back. He flipped his Winston over onto some pallets or something, and then, oops, sorry about that.
Oh shit, man! That damn thing got away from me real fast. See, y'all got a fire extinguisher? Damn, this thing is big, man. It's hot. Some bitch is hot. I'm going to the car.
Is that an AB? Y'all got one of them ABC fire extinguishers? I think it might work. No,
who's got to pee? Somebody pee on these pallets, man. This thing is really starting to rip roar here. So this facility here actually primarily handled retail, and a big box store retail. So this is nothing that was allocated for farm. This is nothing that was, primarily allocated towards lawn care. Pretty much all of this was allocated towards big box store retail. And so, is this going to ripple its way out into various industries in the green industry? Probably not. If it might, create some more supply chain issues in big box stores, but I think everybody's pretty accustomed to that. And typically the people that are listening to us aren't shopping at big box stores for fertilizer anyway. So likely
just electric mowers
would be noticed, unless it is Jacob. Man, let me tell you, Ryan, I don't know what kind of scam they were working on in there, but that was one of the craziest damn things I had ever seen.
I swear to gosh. So, if you don't know what we're talking about, on our Discord, there is a group of folks that are all about what was that guy's name on Wall Street Bets? The guy that won all the, that not win, but earned all the money. Deep fucking Value. Remember Deep fucking Value? He was the guy who got in on like GameStop and all that shit like early on. Anyhow, Jacob, one of our loyal listeners, Patreon members, he is the Deep fucking Value of big box stores, and this guy is his own coupon code. I don't know how he did it, but Matt, there's going to be a Wikipedia page about that someday. The great big box heist of 2022.
And you know what? Actually, when it comes up a little later, I've got a perfect tie-in for people that choose to participate in those types of things that Jacob does as well. We're going to move on to the next article here, and this is more just awesome news. This is out of the New York Times. We have food prices approach record highs, threatening the world's poorest. That's typically how this goes. The prices have climbed to their highest level since 2011, according to a UN index. It could cause social unrest on a widespread scale, one expert said. Food prices have skyrocketed globally because of disruptions in global supply chain, adverse weather, and rising energy prices, increases that are imposing a heavy burden on poorer people around the world and threatening to stoke social unrest. The increases have affected items as varied as grains, vegetable oils, butter, pasta, beef, and coffee. They come as farmers around the globe face an array of challenges, including drought and ice storms that have ruined crops, rising prices for fertilizer and fuel, and pandemic related labor shortages and supply chain disruptions that make it difficult to get products on the market. Um, so, according to an expert here who's a Peterson Institute for International Economics, Maurice Obstfield, he said it's not much of an exaggeration to say the world was approaching a global food crisis, and that slower growth, high unemployment, which doesn't exist in the United States, and stressed budgets from governments that have spent heavily to combat the pandemic had created a perfect storm of adverse circumstances. There's a lot to worry about for social unrest on a widespread scale. Even before the pandemic, global food prices had been trending upward because disease wiped out a lot of China's pig herd, and the United States China trade war resulted in Chinese tariffs on American agricultural goods. And then it kind of goes on to give more statistics here on inflation and everything else that's possibly going on. And then it also dips into other countries that are really getting screwed over the situation that we're in right now. Conflicts in Ukraine, who is a major producer of wheat and corn. We have the situation with Belarus and Latvia that or was it Latvia? I can't remember, but they're no longer shipping any potash that's coming from there. Yep. China has hoarded 50% of the world's grain, which is bizarre. Africa and the Middle East and Latin America are more dependent on imported food and are struggling. Russia, Brazil, and Turkey and Argentina have suffered because their currency value has been in major decline. Africa with conflicts, the Congo, Ethiopia, Nigeria, South Sudan. In other words, we're pretty much in a global state of unrest right now when it comes to anything ag or green industry related. Really, arguably, the United States is the biggest. Well, it's not arguably, definitely is the biggest in green industry. But the turfgrass sector here is just not even comparable to what goes on in the rest of the world. Well, maybe soccer in Europe, but that's a pretty big thing there.
No,
I forgot.
Definitely soccer in Europe. I mean, that's
can I
soccer.
Can I throw some American shade out there?
Yeah,
Can I throw some American shade out there. Is soccer a real sport?
Yeah, it's a real sport.
I'm just kidding, man. I know it is. Listen. If I attempted to play soccer, I'd have a heart attack and died multiple times before the end of the game, and it would take one kick from a soccer ball to hit me in the chest. That would probably initiate the heart attack.
The heart attack,
not the running.
Actually,
it would be.
Actually, no. I think that's a way
around a fastball.
We can solve that elephantitis issue. I think if we hook up an AED to your junk and press the big green button, I think that'll take care of that. This could be a novel approach. We should talk to your Twitter friends and see what they think about that. Think of all the trauma you'll save that the folks in the animal husbandry clinic. Anyway, so it's interesting about this article. Well, maybe, I don't know. You see how big that thing is, right? So
are we all going to starve to death, Ryan? Is that what they're telling us?
Man, there's a lot going on. I mean, there's this article really touches the face of a lot of these issues, but some of the bigger ones, like right now, there's a drought that's going on in South America. Doesn't look to get better here anytime soon, and they're getting close, right? Close-ish to harvest, right? They're a couple months away or so, but yeah,
what did they reduce their soybean yields by, what was it, like 12 million metric tons or something? I think they
it's been downgraded every week for the last 4 weeks straight. So like they keep going further and further. So that'll be interesting, right? And maybe that pulls soybean prices up, and then some of that helps with the fertilizer costs, because then farmers here can plant more soybeans because the price is going up instead of planting corn. There's a lot going on. So the other thing with the natural gas, so I was reading a little bit, trying to understand a little about this situation in Europe and how that's all going to get impacted. And what's really interesting is how much of our natural gas we're sending over there, which sounds like a lot, but it's only 10% right now. But the fact is that we can't ship more than 10%. Like we have we're sending it over there in ships. There's no pipeline through the Atlantic, right, to get it over to Europe. And so it's not like, hey, 10%, that's not a lot. That's literally all that we can ship out to them right now. So, they're making plans for, what if, certain countries get cut off, due to this whole conflict or potential conflict over there. So already a very, tense situation geopolitically, militarily, all that other stuff. But just from an energy standpoint, very tenuous, right? And so I don't know, guys, like the cost of natural gas here is through the roof. That winter storm last week sent it like 30% higher than where it was the previous week. So all that impacts fertilizer, right? Because that is the one ticket that we need to make synthetic nitrogen. Now, hey, again, Matt, you talk to your Twitter friends. Ray, maybe you should be introduced to these folks because they think we just need to just abandon all that stuff and go back to the days of George Washington Carver and George Washington, the OG, and just be a completely agrarian society,
Well, agrarian and depopulated by approximately, I want to estimate 75%. 75% of us need to just go away and stop being a mouse to feed.
Especially
That
me.
is, well,
I'm really
or
dragging it
even
down.
me. Or even me. I mean, I'm probably horrible because I'm sorry I couldn't join everybody for Power Hour last night, but guess what? One of my friends did for me.
What did you eat, Ray?
Made you a dinner.
Okay, I was having dinner with a friend, and I was finishing a 1.5 pound ribeye.
There he goes.
Ray.
There he is.
He's on
Ray
that.
is part
What was
tiger.
that? Ray's on that South Beach diet. No carbs, all protein. And
No,
fat.
that's what it is. It's Year of the Tiger. Ray has embraced it, and he's just going to eat. That's the buzzer. But hang on, we're going to go long because we're going to run short on returns, and we've got another one we need to cover here, and this is kind of DeMay's forte here, and I wanted to bring it back up because we had glossed over it a couple weeks ago.
Ray's too.
Yes, and this is the Endangered Species Act and what it means for ag's pesticide use. Basically, when Zach Rendell learned about the EPA's new labels for Enlist 1 and Enlist Duo banned use of the herbicides on his Northeast Oklahoma farm, which was banking on planting Enlist soybeans for the spring, he had a lot of words to describe the situation. Not all of them fit for print. That's my kind of guy right there. He said, I'm realizing this is probably the new normal. And, well, it's just one more thing to worry about. It's very stressful for a younger producer to operate when you don't know what they'll take away from you next. So why is this happening? Essentially, for the first time in 3 decades, the EPA has decided to fully comply with a federal statute called the Endangered Species Act. Reversing decades of practice, the U.S. EPA is taking meaningful action to further the agency's compliance with the ESA, the Endangered Species Act, when evaluating and registering new pesticide AIs. The agency wrote in a news release on January 11th, effective today, before the EPA registers any new conventional AIs, the agency will evaluate the potential effects of the AI on federally threatened or endangered listed species and their designated critical habitats. So what is in the ESA, and what does it mean for current and future pesticide registrations? Well, it means that we're going to see a lot of weirdness when it comes to these registrations. They openly noted in its announcements the agency has never been fully in compliance with the ESA, which became federal law in 1973. Just 3 short years after the EPA itself was founded by Nixon, the ESA was designed to protect endangered and threatened species from extinction. Enforcing it falls into 3 federal agencies: the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services, the National Marine Fisheries, and the USDA. And there's 1,800 species required to ensure that those actions won't jeopardize the safety and health of those species or their habitats. New label restrictions are likely for most ag pesticides. In order to comply with the ESA, the EPA will conduct a process called biological evaluation for every new pesticide registration. The biological evaluation assesses whether the pesticide and its application parameters are likely to adversely affect any listed species or habitats or not. The bar is very low for finding a likely to adversely affect ruling for a species, the agency has noted in the past. As a result, most of the pesticides that have gone through this process, such as glyphosate, atrazine, and neonicotinoids, are found likely to have adversely affected the majority of listed species. However, this doesn't automatically result in label changes. The EPA passes its biological evaluation conclusions to the services, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and the National Marine Fisheries Services. They examine the species, habitats, and pesticides in question to deliver a biological opinion on whether the registration will cause jeopardy to a listed species or adverse modification, blah, 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 blah. In a webinar, employees from the EPA and services stressed that they work hard to find mitigations that will avoid jeopardy designation for a pesticide registration. The goal is to not have a jeopardy. The goal is to avoid jeopardy. And so it is a big tool to do that. Is mitigations. That might be minimizing spray drift or runoff. Next up, glyphosate, atrazine, neonicotinoids, and more. Beyond the list herbicides, only a handful of pesticides, malathion, 1,3-D, metachlor, bromoxynil, and bromocrine, have made it through the full process from biological evaluation and completed biological opinions with proposed mitigation measures. More are coming. The EPA has already conducted biological evaluations on common ag pesticides, including finalized evaluations of glyphosate, atrazine, and simazine. They are now in the hands of the services, which will issue biological opinions on them in the coming months. The EPA has also released a draft biological evaluation of 3 neonicotinoids commonly used in row crop treatments, clothanidin, imidacloprid, and thiamethoxam. The agency expects to finalize those evaluations in the summer 2022, after which they will move on to the services for biological opinions. So here we go, boys. Let's put a metric shitload of bureaucracy between AIs, new AIs, and registration. I understand that we can't go nilly-willy and dumping gallons of imidacloprid on trees that are in full bloom. We can't go find beehives and light them up with neonicotinoids. I don't think anybody's in favor of that. However, putting multiple layers of bureaucracy in front of the release of new AIs, is that the best we can do for bringing new technologies onto the marketplace? Is this going to incur new innovation, or is this going to inhibit new innovation? I'm curious of y'all's opinion.
Well, I think it's going to inhibit it in the sense that you've got a law that's basically 50 years old and nobody's followed it. And now we're going to, make up the rules to a certain extent because you can't just go back. I mean, they're going to follow the spirit of the law, but the way it was written in 73 is vastly different than, the regulatory, the R&D climate. I mean, everything has changed, right? So I think it'll be interesting to see what comes of it with the re-registration of some of these common ag pesticides and what they say. But like, for example, the 2 herbicides at the top of the article there, so what this means is that they've looked at these, and now the recommendation or the regulation that comes down from US EPA impacts certain critical habitats like they talked about. So for instance, those 2 particular herbicides, there's 88 counties in Ohio. There's 13 of them now that you cannot use those because they contain those critical habitats. And so that's how they're breaking this down. And that's how, I don't know if that's how it's going to go for everything else, but I think there's going to be a lot of hand wringing and soul searching, Ray, when people are trying to not only make sense of this, but try to figure out what can I use and where can I use it? And, is it just related to ag? Is it related to turf? How does this all go?
Okay. As far as the AIs are concerned, what I've seen happen in the past, and this to me is just wrong, is turf and ornamentals gets thrown under the bus in many cases where
True.
if EPA says, this active ingredient is a problem to ag, then the patent holder, manufacturer, etc., what typically happens is they make these backdoor deals that say, will we be allowed to use this in ag if we take it away from turf and ornamentals? I mean, I've seen that time and
Oh, it's a
time
bargaining chip.
again.
Oh, yeah, it's a
Yeah,
bargaining chip.
it's a time and time again, but then you do realize that I consider a lot of the active ingredients such that there are not a lot of good substitutes. And for example, looking at neonicotinoids at this light, that to me is concerning because neonicotinoids were supposed to be the safer and lower impact alternative or substitute for what was used prior to 1990, for example,
Hmm.
because they're looking at, and likewise with glyphosate, glyphosate was a safer alternative for a lot of what went on prior to the 1980s. So this is very interesting because for me, my basic question is, what is your proposed alternative? What is your
That's a good
proposed
question.
alternative? Is this alternative practical? Does this alternative work? I mean, those are some questions that I feel are very much glossed over. I mean, that was the question that got a very glossed over answer regarding the fate of MSMA. And their rationale was, well, for example, quinclorac and pre-emergence can totally substitute for MSMA. Yes and no. However, in many states, quinclorac is regulated as a water pollutant.
Hmm.
So whereas MSMA and the arsenic contained from MSMA was not a water pollutant of concern, except in that one instance in Florida. So I'm not sure that things were necessarily thought through in that case. And given that history, I don't think that things are being thought through very well moving forward when we look at the current roster of active ingredients.
Well, and I think that's going to be the telling thing is, they're reviewing some common ag pesticides, but ones that are commonly used in turf as well here, clothianidin,
Yeah.
metacloprid, atrazine, or
Mhm.
not, well, simazine. So
Simazine
I
and
think it's going to
atrazine.
be,
Atrazine is used too.
yeah.
Atrazine is used a lot in
I
the
sprayed a
southern
hell of a lot
states
of
and
atrazine
Florida.
over the years.
Yeah. And I used to use
Smoked it,
pounds and
snorted it, rolled it,
pounds
sprayed it.
of Simazine DF net. I used to use
Mhm.
pounds and pounds of that stuff back in my day, but Hawaii declared that a water pollutant, and that went bye-bye.
Well, it'll be interesting to see how this plays out because now the government has decided that they want more control and more authority over what gets registered, where it gets registered, even down to the county level. So federal government is making decisions at the county level, and that's I don't know. It'll be interesting to watch how all this plays out. Gentlemen, this listen. We were talking about how Jacob is out there running some sort of deal and has got all these people looped into also, figuring out what to do with Lowe's and buying 100,000 ego mowers for 27 cents a piece and whatever other gig they've got going on there. And listen, in most people would be nervous about doing that kind of thing, right? Because you got to use a certain app on a certain time of day, and you got to have a certain IP address from a certain country. And it starts to sound a little sketchy, but you know why they're not sketched out by it? It's because we got Jesse Bousquet on the line.
Yeah.
Listen, for all the people out there that run into some criminal defense issues, we got your guy. You need to check out Jesse Bousquet Jr. We had a great time hanging out with him last night. We had some legal issues we needed to get squared away. A lot of it had to do with whatever's been going on with Lowe's and the ego mowers and all this fun stuff. And so, we wanted to check it out. Look, he's licensed in 2 states, Massachusetts and Rhode Island, but you know what? He also handles federal cases as well. So if you find yourself in a situation where you're crossing state lines and it becomes federal or whatever the case may be, look, we got the guy that will help you out. So there's nothing to worry about, Jacob. There's nothing to worry about anybody participating along with Jacob, because we have Jesse Bousquet Jr. I thought that was pretty good.
It was a good tie-in. And you know what? You got to also plug the patrons here, right? So last night we had a nice. It was a 4 to 5 hour event on Zoom, just hanging out, chilling. We traded some free consulting. I mean, you get a guy like Jesse Bousquet on the line for 4 or 5 hours, and boy, Ray, the meter's ticking. But we
that was a
$10,000.
That was a $10,000 event right there.
Oh, for sure,
absolutely,
and worth it.
But for me, it was worth it because I had my 1.5 pound ribeye.
Well, so Ray did not participate. Ray had a previous commitment with the steak, but I'll say this is that we shared war stories and we shared ways to help each other. So one of us learned how to deal with the police, in case you get stopped or anything bad happens to them, and the other person learned to never ever plant Barenbrug RPR ever again. And I'm not going to say who. I'm not going to say who's. I'm not going to say who's who. I'm just going to say that we all learned from each other that night. And with that, it's now time for Sheila and the Burns.
Sheila, what do you think of Barenberg regenerative perennial ryegrass? That was her voice of disgust tonight. You could hear it lingering back there. Speaking of disgusting, U.S. farm income expected to fall as costs for fertilizer and other production expenses climb sharply. We call that hockey stick growth in the startup world. Unfortunately, when it comes to cost hockey sticking, that is a bad gig, to say the least. Iowa and U.S. farmers can expect income from crops and livestock production to tumble, with costs spiking and government payments falling. The U.S. Department of Agriculture says in a forecast for 2022. The agency expects U.S. farm income to fall to $113.7 billion, down approximately $10 billion or 8% from 2021. Last year's farm income hit the highest level since 2016, with corn and soybean prices closing in on record high set in 2012 and 2013. Farming is a significant economic driver in Iowa, which leads the nation in corn, hog, and egg production, and is second to Illinois in soybean production. Agriculture ripples through the state's economy with ties to equipment manufacturing, insurance, seed renewable fuel production, another category Iowa leads. The state ranks second only to California when it comes to the size of its farm economy. Lance Lillibridge, president of the Iowa Corn Growers Board, said he believes the U.S. farm income will be the lowest this year than the Agriculture Department predicts in its forecast released Friday. I think incomes will be significantly in the red. That's not good. The Agriculture Department expects the cost to raise crops and livestock will grow 5.1% to $411.6 billion over the 2021 figure, with the price of fertilizer climbing 12% for livestock feed, up 6.1%. This year's expected hike in expenses comes on top of a 9.4% increase last year, the forecast said. However, he said those numbers of 12%, 9%, 11% are absolute bullshit. Fertilizer costs are actually up 300%, and cost of herbicides, pesticides, and other crop protection products are up 100 to 150%. It makes you want to throw up, he said. He expects his fertilizer cost will be $190,000 more than last year's by the time the season ends. The forecast said soybean growers should expect to get 8.9% more when they sell their crops this year, and corn growers should receive 4.8% more, with both increases primarily due to larger quantities sold. However, a couple things to take note on that when it comes to this, and this is what I've been hearing from the local kind of situation here, and it goes on and talks about, I'll kind of summarize the rest of this article based on some of the things I've heard here locally. Local extension agents and ag departments and ag risk departments are encouraging farmers right now to build silos. And the premise behind building silos and adding dryers to them is for long term storage of grain that's harvested this year. And the reason why they want to do that is that they want them to sell it on the open spot market to get the absolute maximum dollar for their grain or product that they possibly can. Versus, and the alternative is setting up a long-term contract with someone, right? So say you grow corn, you set up a long-term contract with an ethanol plant where, on certain days you're going to deliver X number of tons of corn to that ethanol plant, and you get locked in. And typically when you get locked in at that price, you get locked in at a lower price because they're locking in such a large volume of material. However, what or these ag consultants and economists are saying right now is that no, store it and sell it on the spot price, right? So don't sign any long-term contracts. It's just as the opportunity comes up to be able to sell it, then sell it there at the absolute most amount of money you possibly can. Here's the caveat to that is that you got to go to the bank, you got to get a loan, you got to build the silos, you have to add dryers to the silo for long-term storage capacity, and you don't know when you're going to get a return on that. And the longer you hold on to it, the potential for you to get the type of return you need to get on that is not, the potential for it to be there declines pretty significantly. Now, the problem is that you are asking the farmer to take on more and more and more risk. Every year a farmer puts plants into the ground, that is a year of risk, right? You're at the risk of weather. You're at the risk of input performance. You, all of it is on the line. It is 100% gamble that you're gambling that the money you spend is going to produce a yield that will give you a return on investment and some profit. Well, now they're saying that's just not enough because we've got all of these additional expenses that are going into the cost for you to be able to plant the fields. Now we need you to build way more infrastructure than you had allotted for. So fuck your cash flow that you had, go to the bank, get more capital, build the silos for long-term storage and sell it for the top dollar that you possibly can. Be prepared to hold on to it. And I don't know, we'll shake the tree, we'll shake the money tree and see where we can get cash to be able to afford these types of things. The whole thing is bizarre. And, like we were talking about in some of the early articles, all the pieces are here for just major, major potential problems. Hopefully, and really the only thing we can do at this point is cross our fingers and hope that nothing bad ends up happening, because that's a very real possibility that we may get through this unscathed and nothing bad happens. And farmers invest in more infrastructure, and now they've got long-term storage, and they get it paid off, and all that's great. Everybody wins, right? It rarely winds up going that way. There's going to be some hiccups and there's going to be some successes, and hopefully there's just no major failures. But case in point, we've got a real testy situation in front of us right now. And just don't breathe too heavily on it, because I don't want anybody's hot breath to take these embers and turn it into a Winston-Salem fire, fertilizer plant fire. Ray, I know you are typically not the voice of reason on this. With all of these pieces in play, how do you think the chessboard shakes out?
Okay, what I think happens is a lot of these growers, they're already stretched to the limit. So you tell a grower that he has to stockpile his crop and try and sell it when the price point is high, that's just not going to fly. And what I see literally happening is the further decline of the family farmer, and we're going to go towards a situation where land, money, and power gets further concentrated into fewer and fewer hands, like in game will be, Matt, can you imagine we have a nitrogen monopoly, a potash monopoly, and a phosphorus monopoly. Now let's also have a corn and soy monopoly too, while we're at it.
Hot take. I was arguing on Twitter this weekend, and someone highly recommended that we needed to socialize agriculture. And their point was that it is unethical for agriculture to produce a profit. Here's the thing: is that socialized agriculture is never going to become a thing. First and foremost, ever. Hopefully not, because that will be the recipe of recipes that lead to massive death. We can look at several points in history that show us exactly what happens when that happens. So that
Exactly.
is off the table. But like you said, as it becomes this reshuffling and re-agglomeration of farms to these huge corporate enterprises, because and why that ends up happening, and I want to make this clear, why that ends up happening is because the farmer does not have the capital to be able to cash flow these things. Cash is king. You have to be able to cash flow these things, and you can only dip into the bank and your credit line so many times without showing significant revenue to be able to support that capital raise that you just did through the bank or whatever subsidy you're using to justify that, I've got at least a guarantee of this much return coming, before they cut you off. And they're like, no, enough is enough. You've had too many adverse weather conditions. You've filed insurance on 300 acres 3 years in a row. This is not working. This is not working. And then what happens is they end up having to sell, and they have to liquidate to be able to pay off what they have owed to the bank, right? And that's where people with massive amounts of cash flow can come in and scoop these things up and cash flow it themselves without having to tap into the bank. And so it's a no-brainer, right? They'll take the money on the front end to be able to buy it because it's cheap interest, and then pay it off over 30, 40 years. And in the meantime, take that money, reinvest into it. And, it just continues to go until they acquire all this major land and operating area. It's incredibly, it's weird. It is so weird. And you know what? I have high hope. I have high expectations that somehow, some way, this is going to shake out and be fine, and things will begin to correct itself before it goes absolutely screwed up. Because at this point, the monopolization of the green industry in America is a major problem. And I feel like people are starting to catch on to it. Speaking of monopolization of the green industry in America, the fertilizer price index jumps the most since September. Elizabeth Elkin of Bloomberg reported that North American fertilizer prices rose the most in almost 5 months this week. The Green Markets North America Fertilizer Price Index jumped 11%, the most since the week ended of September 10th. India, the world's largest importer of popular nitrogen fertilizer urea, is looking to buy product later than usual. That will increase competition for nitrogen for the first quarter of 2022, when the U.S. and Europe are looking to buy, said Alexis Maxwell, an analyst for Bloomberg's Green Markets. And if anybody looks at this chart right here, and you're going to see where American fertilizer prices were jumping, and then we had a sharp dip at the start of the year. And the reason why is that one of the tendered vessels of urea for India was denied. They said, no, we're not going to take it right now. And there was a vessel ready to go. And so what did they do? They dumped it down in NOLA. And when they dumped it, that's when you saw a price dump take place in the market. Well, India comes back and they said, well, we still want it. We just want it a little bit later. And we're climbing right back up. It's like, well, we're going to U-turn that bad boy. I believe in the stock market world for the William O'Neill traders, that's called an oops reversal. And that's exactly what that has. Though prices in the U.S. have dipped off records, they remain high. That's adding cost to farmers and prompting some to curb fertilizer uses, threatening to curb crop yields and raise global food prices that are near a record high. So again, more bad news on top of more bad news on top of more bad news, and now we're getting to the point where it. Everybody already knows inflation's here, right? But what happens? And I'm genuinely curious here. What happens? Oh my gosh! Sorry, I got distracted there with our private chat.
We'll share it later. We'll share it later. We'll share it later. Go on.
I did not mean to click on that right there. What I don't know what anybody's prepared for when it comes to inflation is what happens when grocery bills double. I'm not talking about 10% up. I'm not talking about 15%. I'm talking about a $200 grocery bill becoming a $400 grocery bill. Or heaven forbid you've got 3 kids and a $300 grocery bill becomes a $600 grocery bill. Because, and I'm not saying we're going to get there this year, but if every one of these puzzle pieces fall to the bad, that is probably a realistic number. What happens then?
I'll tell you what probably is going to happen, Matt, because do you know what keeps me relatively resilient as far as increasing prices go? The fact that what I typically consume is not considered or is not like highly dependent on commodities, because we're talking about corn and soy. My only interaction with corn and soy is in the form of the fact that those products are animal feed. But for your average American or Western European, unfortunately, a lot of what they consume is essentially a product or direct product or byproduct of corn and soy. In other words, if something comes in a bag or a box or a bottle, chances are there are a lot of corn and soy ingredients in that thing. And the price of those convenience foods or food products is going to go up. It's going to go up because I know back in the old days, those foods were cheap and convenient. Well, with the price of corn and soy going up and the yields going down due to a lack of fertilizer, you're going to have an issue where those items become expensive. And for people that are dependent on those convenience items, that is going to hurt a lot.
I mean, that's the thing is at what point here's my question back to that, Matt, is at what point do consumers change their behavior, right? Start rationing meat or start not consuming as much meat or consuming, some of these other processed products that, the margin has to be even higher because, the work that it takes to process and make that corn or those soybeans or whatever into some sort of edible shitty gas station food.
Schmoo.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. maybe even a Chick-fil-A sandwich,
Yeah.
There's one more thing in this article real quick. Let me bring this up because this is the part that absolutely freaking triggered me.
Can I ask, is it the part where Bezos raised Amazon Prime membership and he fucked up the automatic reorder for India on the barge urea? Because that pisses me off too.
I know. It had to do with nutrients. And
oh, okay. I just had to throw Bezos in there, see if it would get you triggered.
I mean, there's not much difference between Amazon and Nutrien these days. Meanwhile, Reuters writers Rod Nickel and Polina Devitt reported last week that Nutrien, the world's biggest potash miner, could boost production by up to 29% in coming years. depending on any sanctions facing rival producers in Russia and Belarus. The Canadian company's interim CEO told Reuters prices of granular potash fertilizer are near 10-year highs in the United States and Brazil. But before we decide to ramp up production, we're going to wait and see how foobarred the situation in Russia and Belarus becomes. So we're going to continue to ride this gravy train and choke the shit out of potassium availability unless the conflict starts, and then we'll cave, and you know what? We'll ramp up production to offset what's going on over there to keep the prices at all-time fucking highs. Listen, the fact that Nutrien was allowed to conglomerate like this was the first, it should have been the first signal to everybody that something was up, right? And it did not stop there. It has not stopped there. Mosaic has taken another page straight from the playbook. Now we've got Koch Industries and Turf Air Supply joining forces into Allied Nutrients. This shit continues to happen. And when you have 3, 4, 5 people that are holding the telephone, guess who does not get to hear the message? The common people, us, the turfgrass people, the family farmers. Nobody knows what the fuck's going on because they're the ones that are holding the rules of the game. When you're the person that knows the rules of the game, you're guaranteed to always win. How about them apples? So thanks again, Nutrien, for being the absolute assholes that you are. I just genuinely appreciate it. That's career suicide, gentlemen, right there.
Well, remember my wish. I want Nutrien and Mosaic and company to all be standing, in Congress, being grilled by that cranky old man who probably hasn't gotten any in decades. That would be my wish.
Well, I know we're not talking about Jeff Bezos because he's
no, I'm talking about I'm talking about getting grilled about the fertilizer monopoly by Chuck Grassley.
Wait a second, I can look this up real quick. Yeah, Chuck
Grassley. Have him basically be over there questioning these guys as to what the intent is of their monopoly, and is there any malfeasance, and does the government need to step in and take action against this fertilizer commodity monopoly?
Well, and I think that's the thing is everybody's making a big deal right now, and I think if the food prices, Matt, get there, this could be a thing of what you and Ray are talking about. Where already there's some saber rattling, in the heartland essentially for these types of hearings to at least occur, right? And we've been hearing for months now, what's the other huge issue out there right now from a global supply chain perspective? Chips, right? We need our chips. So I don't know how clued in you guys are. Intel announced $20 billion investment here in Ohio to start building 2 of eventually 10. They call them, they're not plants, they're called fabs, right? And Ohio is going to be the largest chip manufacturing center in the world, right? When this is all done. So I think the point, but I'm saying though, here's the thing: is you can't do that with the fertilizer market, right? Because it's completely decentralized. So you're going to have to hold these people's feet to the fire. You're going to have to align with different. I mean, in this case of what we know about, the situation in Europe and the situation in Canada, right? It's going to have to be some with our adversaries and some with our allies, right? To get this shit unfucked. And it's not going to happen overnight. But I guarantee you, though, that if people start having, like what you're saying, Matt, grocery bills that are, listen, they've already gone up at an alarming rate, right? But what is the ceiling? What is that point? And I don't know. I mean, there's just, it's unfortunate because there's so much other shit going on that's consuming the bandwidth of, real talk. on
No,
24-hour news, but
yeah,
this is
that's
real
the
talk.
thing. This is real talk. What is on
It
news
is.
right now is absolute garbage. Now, kudos. Hey, look, and you kick me off YouTube for this, but good for Canada for standing up to the government and saying, you know what? Listen, we've been locked down too long. Let us go back to normal life. It's a controversial take. I don't give a shit. Sue me. I take that position because I trust AVE. He's Canadian, and if it's good enough for him, it's good enough for me. Because when I grow up, I want to be a man like he is. On the flip side of this, everything else we see on the news is second-rate importance to what is going on right here. Because when they talk about one of the earlier articles, they talked about civil unrest. When the common man, when the average middle class, low class human being, citizen in the United States, immigrant in the United States, anybody living in the United States of those classes realizes what is going on, and they are being taken advantage of and manipulated. So people, oh man, it just anyway. I think everybody gets where I'm going with this. And just to throw, listen. We got an ammonium nitrate fire going. Let's inject it with potassium permanganate or something and hydrogen peroxide. I don't know. Let's see what's going on cattle inventory contracts in the U.S. and Illinois. The size of the U.S. cattle herd has declined 2% last year as farmers continue to struggle with feed and profitability issues. All cattle and calves in the United States totaled 91.9 million head as of January 1st, down 1.9 million head from the previous year. The January 31st cattle inventory report included the following estimates. All cows and heifers that have calved totaled 39.5 million head, down 2% from a year ago. Beef cows sold 30.1 million head, down 2%. Milk cows at 9.38 million head, declined 1%. In general, the numbers are friendly to the market. Probably one of the most important numbers of the beef cow herd, which is down 1.5 million head. The smallest beef cow inventory since January of 2014. They're taking our beef away. Wait until Middle America finds out about this. I'm not going to go through all this. Feel free to read this article. Go ahead.
You understand what they're doing, right? They're fucking thinning the herd. They're getting rid of cattle because market prices are high. People either aren't buying beef, right? Number one, or it's so goddamn costly to keep these things alive and raise them to maturity. They can't do it. They can't absorb the cost. So listen, here it is right now, boys. 2022. It's the year of less head.
Yep, less head, and this is where I also get into the nutritional YouTubers, right? And it is entirely political in part of the planned depopulation and subjugation of the world is to get everybody to eat less beef, chicken, and pork. Because
what's the
meat
thing?
Because the meat eaters, the meat eaters are the people that enjoy the best health, the best vitality, but you start feeding people the shit that's intended to be animal feed, like corn products and soy byproducts.
What about corn dogs?
No, Matt. I mean, talk about
no corn dog for me either, man.
The thing that it tastes good, but it just compromises your health. Okay, I mean,
it's about as much nitrates in that corn dog as the Muddy Creek in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. All right.
Yeah, because I've had to come to the realization that, unfortunately, the actual people that knew what they were talking about had it right in that if it tastes good, you probably shouldn't be eating it.
What if, now listen, this is maybe a mitigation strategy that they haven't thought of, but what if they took those 3 creeks in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, and turn them into a dick-shaped food on a stick and cover them with a delicious batter. Maybe
Let's
that might
check
help.
out this week's returns. If anybody didn't catch that, we had population control. They're taking away our meat to poisonous, and then we were going to turn waterways into phallic objects. This week on our returns, we're going to make all of that wonderful news just dissipate because of all this wonderful news. And listen, this is the most beautiful thing. Look, we get up here and we chop a lot. We have some fun things to say, but what people don't recognize is that Ray and Ryan have like real careers and do real positive things for the industry, unlike I do, which is just bitch and moan and cry behind a microphone. Here, Ohio Turfgrass President Ryan DeMay has been working to announce that it has signed an agreement with Ohio State University to strengthen the future of Ohio's turfgrass industry indefinitely. Under the agreement, the OTF will contribute $100,000 over a 5-year period into a fund managed by the university. Ohio State will then match OTF's contribution to the fund. The result will provide students at Ohio State campuses studying turfgrass science nearly $10,000 in scholarships on an annual basis perpetually, in addition to the traditional scholarships that OTF provides. The partnership will provide students studying turfgrass sciences with even more resources to be successful, OTF President Ryan DeMay said. This program will increase and enhance OTF's annual contributions to the OSU Turfgrass program. We appreciate Ohio State working with OTF to make this happen. The past fiscal year, OTF contributions to OSU's Turfgrass program and student scholarships topped more than $60,000, raising the overall OTF and the Ohio Turfgrass Research Trust have historically contributed in donations and scholarships to nearly $4 million. Everybody, let's give a round of applause real quick for Ryan DeMay in supporting the continuation and the future of the turfgrass industry in Ohio. Sir, I'm honored to do this show with you, and I genuinely fucking mean that.
I hope you fucking do. All right, no kidding.
I do.
No, I feel like I'm in the midst of greatness. Okay, I really do. I mean, yeah. I mean, Ryan is somebody, and he's doing good things. I mean, and by the way, I'm not that great myself where I'm at, because you know what I'm considered in the industry here?
Fringe.
I'm considered a gadfly. And fringe. Yes, I'm considered very fringe. Because I tell people to take their fucking compost and shove it. Bring in sand.
Listen, Ray, the world needs people like you. The world probably could be all right without people like me, and we definitely need more people like Ryan DeMay. So we're at least trending in the appropriate direction here. We'll check out this other return here. Rising fertilizer prices in turfgrass. With contracts being signed for lawn care services this summer, homeowners might be prepared. What was that?
Sheila.
Her name's
She
Kelly.
looks like
Though.
Sheila.
She looks like a nice lady. She looks like a nice lady.
She does.
That's a beautiful vest. It's a beautiful
It
vest.
is.
All right. Sorry.
Homeowners might be surprised at the price. This is due to a number of factors, but the rising cost of fertilizer is key. According to a December 9th Reuters article, global fertilizer prices have reached record highs this year, in part due to soaring prices for natural gas used to produce them and severe storms in the United States that disrupted production. While not much can be done about rising costs and lawn care services need to cover their costs, here are some turf fertilization points. I took these directly from our University of Nebraska Lincoln publication on fertilizing home lawns. The entire publication is over here. Lawns need to be fertilized to maintain color, density, and vigor. The healthier and more vigorous a lawn is, the better it can withstand stress from heat, drought, traffic, and pets, as well as compete against weeds, diseases, and insects. However, while excess fertilizing can produce a dark green lawn, it is likely not the healthiest turf. Fertilizing in moderation to maintain moderate growth and good density is effective for lawns. The amount of fertilizer applied annually to a lawn depends on a number of factors, blah, 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 age and quality. And general lawns require about 3.5 to 4 pounds of nitrogen per 1,000 square feet per year. The publication recommends applying about 1 pound late in August or early September, 3/4 to 1 pound in late May or early June, and in mid to late October, and 1 to 3/4 pounds late April. Laying out a full lawn care program for you right here. Turf type tall fescue performs better with less nitrogen than Kentucky bluegrass or perennial ryegrass. If you have a tall fescue lawn, know that fertilizer rates can be lowered. And then it talks about sandy soils here. Basically, what is nice about this is coming out of the Columbus Telegram here is they're like, hey, as you're getting price increases from your lawn care companies right now, don't panic because they're the ones that are facing a real full-fledged panic right now. Now, what's funny is that they don't also know that it's about to show up in grocery stores too, and everybody's going to be panicking. But well, maybe not everybody. Typically the
Hashtag
people
real
that-
talk.
Yeah, the people that can afford lawn care services in general, aren't worried too much about. And, listen, I know from my experience, typically when I treated lawns, the majority of my customers were of the age they were empty nesters or soon to be empty nesters, and they're all right. They figure out a way to make things work. And me as a business owner, I got to figure out ways to make it work too. So sometimes you got to give a little to get a little, and you negotiate, and that's how it works out. But it is nice that if you are a lawn care company owner right now, you can take this article right here and send it out to your lawn customers, or at least this early part of it. Maybe not the part where they provide in detail how to run a lawn care program, but at least the part that explains why prices have gone up the way they have. You've got a lot of fuel out there, and hopefully we've given you a lot of fuel to be able to take these out into the world and use it to justify why you need to charge what you need to charge in order to remain profitable.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the biggest thing. I mean, it's when I read this, it made me think of okay, how do you shop for lawn care services as a consumer in 2022, right? Like, what are the driving forces? And I'll tell you this: like, we had a conversation with Steve Darcy Thursday night, Matt, while you were at the clinic, and yeah. And a couple of the things that he said were, he was having some difficulties in pulling people in for a variety of reasons, because of price mainly. And so we talked about, hey, price versus quality and things of that nature. So I think it's interesting and important to understand for homeowners, right? If you're going to watch this and say, okay, hey, what do I need to be looking for? Number one, it's going to be really tough this year to get an apples to apples quote. I mean, it's going to be really tough because people that are unscrupulous and that don't know what they're doing, Ray, are going to try everything that they possibly can to pull out as much, of the actual product that they can, while still trying to show or make it seem like they're delivering the same amount of value. Would you say that to be fair? Ray, you're on mute. Oh man, there he goes.
You're still on mute, right?
Uh-oh.
Okay, now you got me.
There he
Okay,
is.
Here we go.
Yep.
We got
okay.
you.
We need to beware of those unscrupulous people that, in the name of their bottom line, they start to cut a lot of corners. That is something to be aware of, where the ethical lawn service provider just lays it out and says, I cost what I do because I'm not here to screw you over. I'm here to do what is absolutely best for your lawn. And that's the bottom line.
And I think that's a really important point if you're a consumer and you're shopping for lawn care services this year, is that the people that are coming over and actually showing you how they're going to deliver an outcome, and price doesn't even enter that equation at first, right? It's just talking about, hey, this is the level of quality that I need to have in my lawn, and here, tell me how you're going to deliver that. Those are the people that I would be more inclined to trust, at least at first, and then verify and see what's going on with their programs. But the other thing is, right, it's going to be all these extracurriculars, right? It's going to be how do we turn that 5-app program into a 4-app program, or how do we drop nitrogen rates 20%? And here's the other thing too, is I believe there's a lot of room for lawn care companies to probably
to drop nitrogen
to drop.
Yeah,
yeah,
because me, I've always been an advocate for minimal amounts of nitrogen, because in reviewing that University of Nebraska article, I my only bone to pick with it is they're telling people to throw down nitrogen in summer or right before summer. Are you sure about that? Because my idea would be to get down that 2 pounds total between fall and right before the onset of dormancy, where this article is talking about throwing down a pound of nitrogen in June, and that would be like the first application I'd cut out. Actually, my nitrogen applications would be focused between end of August until the grass is ready to go to sleep. Make that grass uptake all of the nitrogen in the fall, so that it has the proverbial full stomach going into winter. Because, by the way, last night I did sleep well. Okay, I did sleep well.
All right, I see where you're going. Sheila came over after dinner. It's tell you a bedtime story. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I just think that that's something we can noodle on a little bit more later. But it's definitely something where I think consumers need to understand better about how to compare what they're buying, right? Because as we all know, there's a lot of shitbags out there. There's not as many people that really want to do a good job or really want to do what's the right thing to do. So we'll talk more about that. So
fertilizer prices going up, spreader settings going down. Let's check out the mailbag.
Yeah.
You've got mail.
This first one here is a question for Ryan, and Ryan, I'm going to jump in after you on this because I've been doing my homework. Ohio Earth Food, smash or pass? They're going to be on a podcast next week and seem unique. Curious if you have insight.
Yeah, so I have used their products before. I know Ted, the owner, great guy. And I think a lot of the talk or the marketing materials are about unlocking nutrients, right? And so I invented a freaking tagline for this guy way back when. I said, Sweaty Teddy is going to release the stranglehold on your nutrients. So if you don't know Ted Nugent, stranglehold, it's fucking great. It's a great line if you're into classic rock. If you're not, go back and listen to your top 40 shit. All right, get out of my fucking lawn. But anyway, it's a unique spin on stuff, and they're using J-Pink. Go ahead and throw up that link. We can noodle around here, and then I'm sure Matthew and Ray will both have something to say. But they blend their own compost, dry it down, slide down there a little bit. Yeah, keep going. So like their 5-4-5, that's sort of their base stuff. They've also got a 3-3-3 or a 3-4-3, something like that. The Revita compost, that's actually their base, I should say. But some good products, nothing wrong with them. Nice people. So I don't know, Matt, what do you think?
All right, so JPing, if you go to that and click that link and scroll down, just no, go back up and click the Revita 545 lawn product there. What and this is one thing I want to bring up is that as far as what this is, composted poultry manure, a little bit of feather meal, a little bit of bone meal, a little sulfate of potash, and a little bit of linardite or and kelp. There's a shit ton of these products on the market now, more than there used to be. I'd say back in when he started this company, he might have been the only one that did it, but now this is kind of the running trend, right? And if you continue to go down a little bit, where you'll get to the pictures, let me ask you this, DeMay. Well, why does my page have a picture and yours not have a picture? Is this actually granulated or is this just chopped?
It's chopped. It's not granulated.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean it's dusty. I mean it's dusty. Your particle uniformity is not great, but like if you're making large scale applications, like if you're just dumping this through a Lely or a big tractor mounted spreader, it is what it is. It's not the end of the world.
Yeah.
You see
So,
if
and
I've got-
that's one thing I wanted to bring up is that if you think you're gonna go dump this into a Lesco spreader and just it's like spreading a granular fertilizer, you probably don't know what you're getting yourself into.
I'll tell you what it's like, and it's drier. It's definitely a drier material than what I'm going to compare it to. But if you've ever spread Carbon Pro G through a spreader, that's what it's like. That's a very good sort of, at least from a particle size and uniformity. That's about where you're at. Let me send J Pink this picture real quick, and you can get a better look at this. This is a good one. There we go. Ray, what do you think? Man, that was quick.
Yeah,
for
there
this
we go.
guy.
That's a great picture.
Pass.
Nice
Because,
nice hands too. Look at that.
yeah,
right.
nice
Those are good
hands. But
hands.
then all I'm thinking about is the cloud of atomized chicken shit that would come up when you try to spread this product.
It'll make it.
Okay,
Listen,
that's
You come home after a day of spreading this, you're not making love to anybody. I can tell you that for certain.
well, and then we run into the typical issue of, because this is an organic based product, when and how much of the nitrogen that you're putting down is actually going to become available to the turf grass. Question number
Yeah.
2. You see, I know you and Matt went off air, but when we had Ollie Pool on,
Mhm.
I think we have a convert, because I don't think Ollie Pool is going to be dabbling in Pro-Pete or any of those other organic blend fertilizers anymore. Because
I mean, this is in the same wheelhouse as who are the boys on the coast? Earthworks. I mean, this is
Earthworks.
This is Earthworks before Earthworks was Earthworks, right? So
Yep,
this
sure.
is the OG Earthworks, and then
Except
Earthworks
it's
came around.
the margins are a little bit different. That's the thing.
Yeah, right. So Earthworks, you're buying a $50 bag of fertilizer. Here, you're
60.
getting it for $24.50. Yeah. So
Yeah. But of course,
Pay
this is
no
not my first
attention to the man behind the
rodeo.
curtain.
Yeah, this is not my first rodeo with this genre of fertilizer, because I'm familiar with that longtime golf and pro brand Sustain.
Yeah,
it's
Sustain.
another Sustain.
And you know what? I despise that product. Okay?
I like Sustain.
Wow.
No,
I don't have a problem
I
with it.
despise it. I
like
have a
Sustain.
big problem
Nature,
with it.
Nature says
Huge
fine.
problem with
I'm
it.
cool with it.
Nature's
All right,
fine.
let's hear it, Ray. Get it. Hey, listen, if you got hate in your heart, brother, let it out. We were talking about Chappelle before the show. It's a great line
Nutrient
from a skit there.
rate, and time of nutrient release. That's my issue.
Well, and I could
Okay.
see in a climate like yours where I don't know if it'd be better or worse. I think here you can, I'm not going to say predict it, but you sort of from anecdotal evidence can understand like when you put it down and have at least a reasonable idea. Now, here's where it gets you. And I've seen this happen. I've had it happen to me.
Mhm.
You make an application to this stuff, like let's say May. Soil temperatures are coming up. You think, hey, we're gonna get in that zone
Yeah.
where we're right in that like 75 to 85, that that fucking sweet spot for microbial activity. Everything's gonna be great, hunky dory. Well, guess what happens? It starts raining like a motherfucker, right? For
Mhm.
weeks and weeks and weeks on end, and it gets hot. And boy, hot and wet together when you got stuff like that out there ain't a good thing. Because then
No, it
it's not
ain't.
so much disease, it's just you are pushing so
Surge growth.
much growth.
Surge growth, right? Well,
So it's the good. You take the good with the bad. That's the way it goes. If you're going to use that product,
and I also can see where if somebody has even turf type tall fescue, what what are they in for if they throw something like this down in the spring and summer turns out to be hot and wet, for example? I mean, isn't that going to be a world of hurt for them?
Yeah, especially in southern areas of the southern transition zone and stuff, you could get yourself into trouble if you're not prepared for what can fall from it. Let's check out this other mailbag here because this sounds really complicated. And I'm going to do my best to read this correctly. Not sure if this question makes sense, but I was thinking of something similar in my lawn. Assuming my lawn's subsoil cannot drain fast enough with sand alone on a section that doesn't have a lot of natural grade, in addition to the sand trench, would running a small diameter perforated pipe and geofabric inside the sand void be advisable? I think I've seen this referred to as an intercept drain, but I only have a small amount of trench depth until I'm above grade, especially at the beginning. I'm thinking a shallow sand void with no pipe to start the run in lieu of native soil, then into perforated pipe to move the water versus relying on subsoil. It would be a continuous trench of sand with pipe, just not at the beginning. I've even thought about trying to modify a catch basin to make it more shallow to start the drain's run, as this section gets standing water on occasion. There is some grade downhill, but not a lot. Thanks in advance. I have.
Okay.
It sounded like we're trying to.
There was some. I took
to a pipe.
Yeah. Hey, when you're like Telly Coleman, sometimes you can't fit everything in the trench that you'd like to, because of elevations and such. I recently commissioned a survey, and let's just say,
survey says.
I think it might be the tallest landmark east of the Mississippi, right there. In Greater Nashville, Telly. But anyhow,
The
so
Batman building ain't got shit on Telly.
If you thought the Pyramid of Memphis was phallic, boy howdy. All right. So this question.
God, where I was going next would have for sure gotten us kicked off the air. I was gonna.
You can say it in the after. You can say it in the after show. You can say it in the after show.
Say that in the after show.
All right. So listen here. So here's Ray. I'd like your input on this too. So I think what this guy's saying. This is Lawn Maverick too from our Discord. Thank you, sir.
Mm-hmm.
Previous one was from Hauling Our Ass, who is I don't know if he's a Discord member or not, or a patron, but he's on our YouTubes a lot. So thank you, sir, for the question. So Lawn Maverick, it sounds like you got a flat-ish site, don't have a lot of grade, and you're trying to drain water off. And so I think what you're talking about with the sand-filled trench, the intercept drain, it could work. If you don't have enough depth to get the pipe in there, I think it's going to be difficult to get water started in a sand-filled trench and then end up getting it into a pipe as a sand transport. What I would tell you to do is probably just run that all with sand, right, at first, and see what you can do there. I think catch basins could be your friend, to where you can change the inverts on the pipe, right? So the pipe that's coming in, lower the pipe that's going out, and try to pick up your grade naturally there. If you had to put a pipe in there, absolutely had to, my advice to you would be to use a smaller diameter pipe. So if you can find it, like they make 2-inch ADS perforated pipe, okay? You can look into something like that, and with it being flat, just the sheer volume of water, right? The hydraulic force of the water will push it through, as long as you have a little bit of grade going downhill. And then the question is where's the outfall? Where is it going? So yeah. All you're doing is transporting water. You got to take it somewhere where it can actually hit a storm drain and GTFO. So that would be my strong inclination, is to just use the sand to start. The geofabric and everything like that, if you do get into the pipe, yeah. A couple resources I would tell you to check out. And then I'll hang up and listen for Ray's response here too. 2 things. Check out French Drain Man on YouTube. Fantastic content related to this subject, and you can learn a lot. And then also, if you're on the Dirty Deeds Discord, check out our friend Mr. Ben Worthman. Ben started a drainage project that seemed very simple at his house a little over 18 months ago, and ended up literally you could probably write a book now on drainage applications in
Making
urban
drains, yes.
urban
I'm
landscapes.
not extra. You're extra.
Yes. So anyhow, Ray, if you had a problem like this, flattish site, a little bit of downhill grade, and you had to make a trench to make it go away, and Telly Coleman was not an impediment to said issues, what would you do?
What I would probably do is I would make a subsurface drain system with that ADS pipe and lead that out of there, and I would not fret about grade, because in my business, what I see happening? I see grades being misused. And you know what the misuse is? People grade their lawn or their turf areas so that it's a freaking 30-degree angle. Oh, we're draining water. Bullshit. You're making a hill or a mountain where there was none previously. Install damn drain pipes. Stop being cheap about it. And, think about the use of your site, because I see it all the time. In the name of moving water, people create 30-degree grades, Matt. Can you imagine that?
Yes, I used to dig them.
It's gonna be hard
all the time.
It's gonna be hard to real mow.
Yeah, and that's the case where I lose my shit, and I'm thinking, it is time to bring a bulldozer in here and flatten this son of a bitch out. Flatten it. I want this thing flat.
I'm here to start the GoFundMe for Ray's bulldozer campaign. You let me know when and where.
Caterpillar is the only way to go, Ray. I'll tell you right now.
I like cats. I like cat
freak with it. It's good.
I like cats too, because one of my friends had a cat backhoe, and she let me try it out, and I loved it. Okay.
Ray,
So
the digger Ito. Gentlemen, let's go ahead and get this wrapped up. Well, real quick before we head out, on Thursday, we have a pro applicator on, Patrick Villancourt, who personal friend of mine, great guy, up in Maine, like on the tip of Maine, managing
Just
turf.
the tip?
So you want to talk about a different whole mindset of everything all above and in between. I actually look forward to this, and I believe he's recently married too, and all that fun stuff. So we got a lot of life and love and liberty to all unpack there. So anyway, we are going to head on over to the after show and let our co-producers and all that fun stuff help select the name of this show. Ray, Ryan, I hope y'all have a beautiful week, and we'll see y'all on Thursday.